So in your organization, is customer care a company initiative, or is it based on a company culture? We'll talk about that with today's special guest, Shep Hyken, on The Buyer's Mind.
Welcome to The Buyer's Mind, where we take a closer look deep inside your customer's decision-making mechanism to reverse engineer the perfect sales presentation. Now, please welcome your host, Jeff Shore.
Welcome, everyone, to The Buyer's Mind, where we investigate exactly what's going on in the minds of prospects who are considering a purchase decision. Yeah, this podcast is all about taking a stroll through the buyer brain. It's about knowing the customer so well that that sale begins to roll out right in front of you. But we like to have fun and celebrate the wonderful, wacky world of sales along the way. I'm your host, Jeff Shore. You could read the bio in the show notes. You can also pop over to jeffshore.com to learn more about us and what we do and sign up for our free Saturday morning video newsletter to help you along your journey. As always, welcome by our show producer, Mr. Paul Murphy. Hey, Murph, how are you today?
Hey, Jeff, great to be here today.
As always, good to have you. Let me ask you a question. When you're shopping, how long does it take for you to size up the vibe? It is to determine whether the energy in the store is positive and appealing.
Probably about 2 seconds. It doesn't take a lot of time to figure that out, does it?
So what is it? I mean, when you just when it feels good, what's happening that makes it feel good?
You know, it's the cleanliness of the store. It's the attitude of the sales staff. It's the lighting. All of it just adds to the experience. If you go into just a regular supermarket, it's kind of dull and it's crowded and you're not really happy with what you're doing there. You're just trying to get through it. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you go into another place, you might be greeted by all kinds of happy people and great lighting and things that just grab your attention.
This is really kind of reminding me of when we had Joseph Pine, the author of Experience Economy, and the idea of business as theater and how we stage a great environment. And, you know, what we're going to be talking about today is the idea of a customer service culture as compared to a customer service initiative, and how people feel about working with you individually and about working with your organization. And we'll bring Shep Hyken on to talk about that, an absolute expert in this area. Let me give you our quote of the day. It's from the great Albert Schweitzer, who said, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I do know, the only ones among you who will really be happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve." The only true happiness comes in when we have sought and found how to serve. And I just want to suggest you, just tacking out of those words, we are created to serve. And that can be in any capacity, whether we're thinking about our work as service, how we serve our family, our significant other, our church, our community, whatever that happens to be. But the fact of the matter is that we are better people when we serve and when we carry that serve first mentality. And it's so easy to make ourselves the star of the show, but when we make others the star, we just live a better life. And I just want to challenge you, who will you serve today? How can you think serve first? And boy, if you're listening to it, just ask yourself the question right now, who can you serve? And maybe it's the next customer you're going to talk to, or maybe it's a coworker or your boss, or maybe it's your kids or your spouse, but who will you serve today? Well, as always, our show is brought to you by our good friends at Home Street Bank. Just want to take a moment to thank them. They're just not just our show sponsor, of course. They are my lender. I used Home Street in my last home purchase. Smoothest transaction I've ever had, and I've purchased quite a few homes in my day. But they are professional. They're dependable. Great rates, fantastic service. And if you're a real estate professional and you want somebody that you can trust to work with your buyers, you're not going to find anybody else who will take better care of your clients. So whether it's banking, home loans, credit lines, you name it, go to homestreetbank.com to learn more. That's homestreetbank.com. Here's our tip of the day before we get to our interview with Shep Hyken. And it's what I call the oh, and by the way. It's an extension to your emails or to your communication. You can actually do this through text. You could do it through a phone call. But the concept is, oh, and by the way, as a way of adding something valuable. So, for example, a customer asks you a question about warranty. You answer the question and add, by the way, I've attached an article about maintenance that will make things much easier for you down the road. So the question is, how can you add value with your "oh, and by the way"? Now think about why this is so important. Because your customer is asking you a question that needs to be answered. That's legit. We get that. That's a big part of what it is that we do. If all we do is answer the question, then we're not exceeding their expectations. There's no surprise, there's no delight, there's no amazement, as Shep Hyken calls it. But when we look at it and we say, here's the answer to your question, oh, and by the way, here's a little bit more. It's those contributions, those little deposits into the relationship you have with the customer that over time will mean so much. It'll make a huge difference in how your customer feels as to whether or not this is a transaction or whether this is an experience. Well, I'm just thrilled to have on the show today just a real legend out there in the world of customer care, customer service. He is a New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of several books, including The Loyal Customer, Moments of Magic, The Amazement Revolution, many more. He's the host also of the very popular podcast, Amazing Business Radio. You can find that on iTunes. He is absolutely a legend as a speaker. And I say that not flippantly. At the National Speakers Association, the guy commands attention in the hall. He's a CPAE, which outside of the NSA, most of us don't know. But if I tell you that he's in the Speaker Hall of Fame, you ought to be impressed, because they don't give that out to just anybody. More than that, he's just a really, really good guy. Shep Hyken, thanks for being on the show.
Jeff, thank you very much. And my mom, I'm going to make her listen to this. She needs to hear this introduction.
You got it. We'll add her to the show notes here. Shep, your tagline is creating a customer service culture. Is that the core of the issue that piques your interest from the very beginning? Customer service cultures as compared to customer service programs or initiatives?
Well, I think in order to have a true customer-focused culture, you have to do all the things that everybody thinks of: deliver a great service, experience, do the training, et cetera, et cetera. And my, I guess if you look at the tagline on my website, it is about creating that customer-focused culture. But my goal is really to make companies and people be amazing. And amazing is a very big word. It's not a difficult thing to achieve from the standpoint of, one interaction to the next. It is difficult to create a culture of that. So, the best way to describe it, Jeff, is if you walk out of a business or you hang up the phone or you've done business with anybody, you go, wow, those people are amazing. That's what we want to create for our clients. And it does start inside, and it starts with leadership defining the culture.
What got you started on this journey? Give us the background to tell us how you got to be at this point prominent as you are in this field.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's very flattering you would say that. I mean, within our little circle, I'm sure people know who I am. But outside of that, I'm just, the normal guy doing what I do. My interest in customer service started back at age 12 when I came home from doing a birthday party magic show that I was paid handsomely $16 for that show.
Nice.
In front of 20 little 6-year-old kids. I was paid, and my mom said, go upstairs and write a thank you note. And little did I know, that was my first lesson in customer service. My dad said, a week from the show, call up, make sure they receive the note, thank them again, and then ask for feedback. Now, he didn't say exactly ask for feedback, but he said, find out if you did a good job. And if you did a good job, ask about the siblings that this little boy had and whether or not they needed a magician for those parties. And there were a bunch of parents in the background or in the, behind the kids watching the show. If you're really good, my dad said that parent will give you the names of his or her friends so that you can call them. And I did that. And guess what happened? I got great feedback. The customer, the parents were very appreciative that I was going to make this extra phone call even after the thank you note. And they gave me the names of these other people. And within about a year and a half, I'm doing like 8 to 10 magic shows every single week. And I realized that a little bit of that was sales, but so much of it was making people feel appreciated. And my dad also taught me to make sure that I show up on time, if not early, give them a little bit more than they expected. So you show up early, you stay late versus, some people that I've worked with that show up late, make up for it by leaving early, if you know what I mean.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but that was a great lesson. And I believe that, my parents teaching me to do the right thing carried through with virtually, every area of my life, especially my little entrepreneurial venture as a, teenager and eventually into college.
The things that you're mentioning, though, show up early, say, do a little bit more than just asking, be polite, be respectful. Look, this isn't rocket science, and yet so many companies in particular can't get this right. Is it harder than it looks, or are we just not really paying attention to the basic things that would cause us to be amazing? Mm-hmm. We're just not even doing the basics right.
Exactly. It's the words you just used, paying attention. If people would pay more attention and they wouldn't just phone in what they're doing and just kind of go through the motions, it's surprisingly when they become service aware and engaged and are very much in tune with what they're doing, what will happen. As we were getting ready to do this interview, I'm writing an article, and I'll give you a little preview of the article. Somebody, one of my friends said he had a chance to rent a Tesla, and he said, "This is really funny. You might even be able to use this in your Shepherd letter." And he's right. He was at a basic rental car company, and they were able to upgrade him to a Tesla. Of course, he had to pay for it. It wasn't a free upgrade, but he said, "Yeah, I've never driven a Tesla. This would be really cool." And on the way out, when the person at the gate is checking your driver's license and the paperwork to make sure it's done properly, maybe you can guess this, maybe you can't, but what do you think that employee asked as my friend was leaving? Would you like the fuel option?
Of course, yeah. Okay. A question I've had 1,000 times, yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And he's driving a Tesla.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, so, yeah. Connect the dots, my friend, yeah.
Right. Basically, he was phoning it in. He was going through the motions.
Sure.
He wasn't really paying attention to what was right in front of him. And as a result, my friend thought, well, this guy's an idiot. Mm-hmm. Okay. And maybe it wasn't quite that strong, but it's like he wasn't paying attention. Mm-hmm. And, that's not a big deal. But those are the types of things that reflect poorly on a business. Mm-hmm. And, you can't have people making the mistake. I just wrote an article just a little while before that. This will come out next week. And this is kind of funny, too. A restaurant example. Years ago, I remember this, and I don't know how it popped into my mind again, but my friend said, "Is the fish fresh?" And the server, without missing a beat, and as serious as can be, said, "It's so fresh, it hasn't even thawed out yet." And he was serious. He thought that if it wasn't in a box that came from the frozen department at your local grocery store, it was fresh, regardless of whether it was on ice and frozen or truly fresh. Yeah. And I thought about it. What are the questions that we're asked all the time that we don't know the answers to? And Jeff, have you ever gone into a restaurant, looked at a menu, and asked the server, "What's the soup of the day?" And the server doesn't know?
Right. Yeah, that's pretty basic, foundational part of your job, you would think, wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah. And hold on, I'll go check with the chef or ask the manager. It's like, why didn't the manager or the chef tell everybody what the specials were going to be? And so anyway, the point is people need to pay attention, and sometimes paying attention and, the questions that we are constantly asked, if we know the answers so well and we make sure that we're in tune with the customer, we can deliver a better experience.
It's
I don't know if that's the question.
Yeah, no,
asked,
absolutely.
That's the answer I gave.
Yeah, no, because we see this happen all the time, right? There is almost this script of life when you walk into a store and somebody says, "Can I help you?" You are just supposed to say, "I'm just looking." And I know for me, I've watched it. "Can I help you?" "Oh, I'm just looking." And then I think to myself, "Dang it, I needed help. Now what do I do?" Because I just told right? But that's
so
what I'm doing. The
customer's guilty as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we do this, but it's. I think it's the same thing that it came down to. Did you find everything all right? You don't really care if I found everything all right. So there's an intentionality to this that's going to separate it out. And I wonder if we've just gotten buried so much in routine that we have just stopped paying attention.
Right. So, by the way, the better question is rather than "Can I help you?" that's a yes or no. No, I'm just looking. By the way, did that expression "No, I'm just looking" came back in the era where people would go shopping but couldn't afford anything in the Depression area, and people would say, "Can I help you?" "No, I'm just looking." But little trivia. So here's a better question: What can I help you find today? Now you've got to tell me what you're in for. Oh, I'm just looking means you really don't plan on buying anything, and you are just looking. But I know what I'm getting ready to go buy a can of paint. I know where the paint department is. I've been here 100 times, but thanks for asking.
Right, exactly. You talk about amazing. You say amazing what it's all about. How often do you get called by companies who are thinking what they want is a customer service program or initiative when what they really need is a transformation away from the thinking about customer care as sort of checking the box under training and into the idea of creating truly amazing experiences?
Sure. So I want to address one issue before I answer that question. Sure. That word amazing that we're using. To me, the word amazing isn't about going over the top and blowing people away every time you deal with them. That's virtually impossible. Those opportunities happen when they fall in your lap. If there's a problem and you can step up and resolve it, or you can do something special when you overhear a customer talking about something. But to me, overall amazing behavior is just being a little bit better than average, but all of the time. And when you're all of the time above average, you're creating this positive, consistent, predictable experience that people love. And then they say you're amazing. And every once in a while, you get to go over the top with something. But back to the question that you asked, there are times that I'm asked to do a 1-hour keynote speech. And I always ask, why is this important to you? And they go, oh, we need help with our customer service. And I will say to the client, I am happy to do this, but I want you to know that 1 hour is a Band-Aid, if that. And let's say there's 500 people in the audience. I believe that about 50 of them, 10%, maybe 15%, so let's make 75, might actually, my speech, and everybody might love it, and they may enjoy themselves, but they're going to walk away, only 10 to 15% of the audience, and do something with it, which, by the way, is an exponential payoff for bringing any speaker in if it creates a difference. However, I want to see those numbers creep up to 50, 60, 70%, not 10 or 15%. And the way to do that is to talk to them about their long-term goals. If you really have an issue with this, you need me to kick it off, but we need to do something to help you keep it going. And one of the things I pride myself on is I'd rather take care of that client. If they want to book me, great. If they want to use my trainers, and by the way, we have trainers, we have online training to help them with this. That's great too. And I'll give them those options, but I will also give them the exercises and the tools that our trainers use so that they can do it themselves. And I will tell them step by step what to do. I'll spend an extra hour, 2 hours with them on the phone, walking through that process. If they don't want to pay for it, or if they can't afford to do it, I want to make sure if they're going to at least bring me in for that hour, that hour lasts a lot longer than the hour they have me there, that it goes well into their future, if not long term. I guess my experience with that is when that is done the right way, the client knows that we're connected and we're going to be working together again.
Let's switch over here to the mind of the customer when they see amazing. You've talked about amazing as doing these little things better, but doing them consistently. And I certainly understand where you're coming from. Just the smallest little change that catches a customer off guard in a very pleasant way right from the very beginning raises their antenna, and they're almost wondering what's happening next. So, in your opinion, what's going on in the mind of the customer when they see these little bits of extraordinary service or conversation? What's happening in their brains?
And I love that you use the word extraordinary, because it is extraordinary is extraordinary. You take ordinary and you just bump it up the tiniest little bit. And again, I emphasize this from just a few minutes ago. If it's consistently that way, this is what the customer's thinking, to your question. I love doing business with them. They are always friendly. They're always so knowledgeable. They're always so helpful. And that word always followed by a compliment like that, or positive adjective, lets you know that you're in that zone of amazement. And it can even be this: I love them because I know that even when there is a problem, I can always count on them. And that's the way, because no company is perfect, no person is perfect. When there's a problem, how it's handled not only just fixes the problem, but it restores the confidence. That's what you're looking for. The word always followed by something positive. You want the customer to be thinking that as a walk away from you, hang up the phone from you, or just thinking back on their experience with you.
We're talking to Shep Hyken, and Shep, on your blog at hyken.com, hyken.com, you wrote an interesting blog post about automation changing the customer care experience. Can you just, for those who have not read that particular blog post, talk a little bit about how that's happening, and when you look at the front end consumer here in our organization, how is automation changing their experience?
Now, are you referring to automation like virtual assistants or chat bots? Or
it could be. That's very well could be. It could be just the process that the sense of customer care that a customer will get in their online shopping and their interaction with the social page. Again, might be a chat box that pops up, a virtual assistant. How can I help you? These are all, I think, examples.
Yeah, so automation is pretty big right now, and the concept of the chatbot, which for those that don't know that, when you see that little window or text bubble pop up while you're on site on somebody's website, and it says, "What can I help you with today?" Many times you're responding to a computer and you're not responding to a human being. And the automation that's happening is fueled by artificial intelligence. And right now that artificial intelligence, in many cases, is handling many lower level basic customer service functions, and it's doing it very, very well, I must say. The best systems are systems where the artificial intelligence piece of this will actually recognize the customer is still unhappy based on what they're saying or asking. The customer might be confused, and then it will seamlessly flip over to a human being, and you don't even realize you're talking. Now, you thought you didn't even know whether you're talking to a robot or computer or a human to begin with, but now it doesn't matter. It's seamless. And I think that seamless experience is important. The other thing, if you're a business that deals with anything online, the goal is to make people feel like there's some human connection. And perhaps the biggest online company today, as far as that goes, is Amazon. They have just done an amazing job. Jeff Bezos felt a long time ago, we're not even going to give them a number to call if there's a problem, because we want to be so good that they don't have to call us. That's a pretty lofty goal. Now, it turned out that once the product left Amazon's warehouse and was being delivered by FedEx, UPS, the post office, whatever the carrier is, if somewhere in that process something broke down, maybe the delivery got lost, sent to a different address by accident, then who does the customer call? So right away, Jeff Bezos knows, even though that's not our fault, it's our responsibility, and we'll take responsibility for it. That's part of what we're here for. And he started giving out the number and the email addresses to connect with Amazon. But that's a pretty good example of a company that wants to be so customer focused that they hope they never have customer service issues. But even when they do, when you do connect with someone from Amazon, it confirms that you're doing business with the right people.
Over the last several years, we've had a lot of thought leaders, gurus, pundits in this space, and especially in the customer care space, suggest that the day of the customer being number one is dead and gone. Instead, and I can think of probably 10 different people who have claimed to come up with this original thought that the employee is number one. If you take great care of your employees, then customer care is an outpouring from that internal culture. So make your employees number one, and they will in turn make the customers number one. Is this your line of thinking as well? Do you agree with this, or is that off base a little bit?
Well, the customer needs to feel like they're important, no doubt about that. But several things here. Number one, and this is my line, what's happening on the inside of the company is being felt on the outside by the customer. So if you're not engaging people properly internally, they're not going to feel good about engaging people on the outside. And by the way, there are exceptions to that rule. You think about it. If you locked your dog up in the trunk of your car on a hot day and left that dog in that trunk for an hour, when you open that trunk, that dog's going to be happy to see you. You put your wife in the trunk or your spouse in the trunk. After an hour, very dangerous to open that car. So, but okay, I digress. Let's go back to something Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines CEO, the first CEO of Southwest. The guy was amazing, and he created an amazing culture of service. And someone once asked him, what's most important, the passenger who's the customer, the stakeholders, who the investors of the company, or is it the employees? And when he first answered, he wasn't sure what the right answer was, but he felt that the right answer was the employees. Because if we take care of our employees, this is basically what he said, they will take care of the passenger properly. And if the passenger's taken care of properly, they're going to want to fly again. And guess who's going to be happy when that happens? The stakeholders. So he called it the conundrum. And after a short period of time, he realized it wasn't a conundrum at all.
And it's the perfect example for somebody who flies all the time. You know this, I see this. You can tell that when you're dealing with somebody at Southwest, they like working at Southwest. They like being a part of that culture, a part of that family. And boy, for us consultant types, thank goodness for United, because they're just providing us with a never-ending string of stories that give us the example on the other side. It's an organization that's rotten in its culture, and as an extension, we see the customer care problems that they're facing. And United probably is, the standard bearer, whipping child right now. But we see that all the time, right? You can almost tell what's going on behind the scenes, or as you're saying, what's happening on the inside, because we as consumers are feeling it on the outside.
Right. I think the expression is the motto, we're not happy till you're not happy.
Yeah.
but let me just, I'm not going to argue with you about United, because they had that terrible debacle earlier this year.
Right.
I will say that any airline, including Southwest at times, not everybody's perfect.
Right.
And there's going to be mistakes. It's a large organization. I believe that Southwest and Alaska Airlines, for that matter, they have just done a superb job. JetBlue falls into that category as well. But these major airlines, Delta, I think, is one of the front runners of great service for the major airlines. I personally deal with American Airlines. Sure, there's times I want to wring their neck, but more than anything, I do enjoy flying them because I overall get a good experience. But I also recognize there are times that, hey, they could have done so much better. And I wish that the CEO, that the executives would take me up on my offer to spend a little bit of time with them. I'm flying their airline virtually every single week, sometimes 2 and 3 times a week.
Right.
And I can give them such great insight, not as somebody that complains, but I can show them the good, the bad, where the opportunities are, and maybe even some ugly that they don't realize might be out there because, they don't see it as a consumer might see it.
Right.
So not defending United. They made their mistakes. They're doing better now. And I think actually sometimes a problem like that brings to light and everybody improves as a result of that.
Sure.
So I like what's happening in the airline industry right now. At least at this point, it looks like the airlines are trying.
Are there other national companies that you really respect for their commitment to customer care?
Wow, there's so many, and many that you don't even know of or hear of, but the big names. One of my favorites is Ace Hardware. And this is a cool story. I was getting ready to write a book. This is the book that came out about 3 years ago called Amaze Every Customer Every Time. That's the title we came up with after I talked with some Ace Hardware executives. I was getting ready to write that book about another company. And after 8 meetings with their PR firm and their executives, we decided to hold off. I was a little dejected over that. I went to do my speech. Prior to the speech for Ace Hardware, I was having lunch with the CEO, the president, some VPs. We'd been working together for years. I'd done many of their meetings. And I told them what happened. They said, "Why don't you write about us?" And I said, "Well, I think you're rock stars at what you do. Actually, you're more solid as a rock at what you do." And I said, if I were to walk down the street and ask 10 people what your top 10 customer service companies are, do you think Ace Hardware would be one of them? And they all said, "Oh, absolutely." I go, "Prove it to me." And they pulled out a Business Week article that listed the top 25 brands in customer service, and they were listed in the top 10, beating out, by the way, the Ritz-Carlton, which blew my mind because I love the Ritz-Carlton too.
Right, sure.
And I said, "Okay, sell me on this. Beyond here, tell me some more. Give me some more good insight and good information." And all of a sudden, they were just spilling out this great, all these stats and facts. And I said, "I'm going to write the book, and you're the feature role model." I love Ace Hardware, and here's why. Everybody pretty much knows who Ace Hardware is. In almost every store, they're not perfect, but most of the stores, which are all individually owned, they're not company-owned stores. Ace Hardware beats the competition. And the competition is big box stores.
Mm-hmm.
They're the Walmarts, they're the Lowe's, they're the Home Depots that have larger selection, sometimes lower price. And in many times they move right next door to an Ace Hardware, where literally Ace is in the shadow of these big buildings when the sun goes to the other side.
Right.
And yet they still thrive. They don't just survive. It's David versus Goliath. And that's a great story, because the way they do it is by being the most helpful retail store on the planet. Not just hardware. I believe they're the role model for anybody and any company, because wouldn't you like to be in your industry known as the best at what you do,
Sure.
the most helpful? And it doesn't matter whether it's retail or whether it's a business to business type company. It's every company, every industry.
What do you do if you're a customer care employee? You really have a burden, a passion for customer care, but you're working in an organization that does not place that customer care at the same level of priority.
I call that the force within. Mm-hmm. And I get very uncomfortable with this question, not because I don't mind answering it, because I feel bad for the company that's about to lose a really good employee. Mm-hmm. Because the employee will sense what's going on and search many times for a better place that's congruent with their beliefs and the culture that employee wants to work in.
So is it fait accompli? We're going to lose that person?
I hope not. I mean, here's what I think. If the employee wants to take the initiative, and people ask me, how can we convince the C-level that customer service is so important? So my answer to that is C-level people want to see numbers. They want data to prove, because they're very bottom line oriented. If I spend this much and focus this much on service, what will happen? I mean, here's the thing. 1%, a 1% change in loyalty from a customer, in other words, to get a customer to come back, can be exponentially huge to your bottom line. And mm-hmm. depending upon the industry you're looking at, the numbers, none of them, there's no industry that's immune from the positive results of a loyal customer. So we can sit down with that client and we can take a look at what their numbers are specifically, what their customer's average spend is, the longevity of that customer. And we can say, okay, what if we got this customer to buy one more time than they normally would? What does that bring to your bottom line? By the way, loyal customers tend to spend more than regular customers every time they come in. Mm-hmm. There's another benefit. So I'll sit down with a client and they'll tell me they're $1 billion company, and I'll go, okay, what's 1% of $1 billion? Well, they know what that is. Mm-hmm. And what if we were to make that happen for you by you investing, $50,000, $100,000? They go, where do I sign up for this?
Right. Sure. All right. We're just about out of time. One person in today's business world that you deeply admire.
That would be Jeff Shore.
Now, see, everybody's going to think that you and I rehearsed this. Come on, Shep. You got to do better than that, or you need to get out more, one way or the other.
Okay. I'll tell you a few people that I really admire.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, I love the standards in the business. I look at Nordstrom and see what Blake Nordstrom and the Nordstrom family have done. I look at Jeff Bezos and just marvel at him. Tony Hsieh from Zappos. Mm-hmm. John Van Huysen, who's mm-hmm. the CEO of Ace Hardware. That guy's freaking brilliant. Mm-hmm. Two guys that I really love are Jim Gilmore and Joe Pine. And they wrote the book, The Experience Economy. And they don't even know how much I love them.
Right.
Other than I write about them. I mean, I don't think I've seen Joe Pine in 20-something years.
Yeah.
Jim Gilmore, I've had breakfast with him, and we spent a day together maybe 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I just love what they stand for.
It's amazing.
Love what they do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So I was going to ask you for one book that's changed your thinking, but you want to double down on Experience Economy, or you got one other choice?
Well, Experience Economy is great. It's all about, and it's still relevant today because Starbucks is such a popular business, and we all know what Starbucks is. But Starbucks has taken a commodity, a coffee bean, and turned it into an experience that people are willing to pay more for. That's a great story, and the thinking behind it is phenomenal, and every company can learn from that. And that's what they did in the Experience Economy. The authors, Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore. Another book that I love and still do is called Moments of Truth by Jan Carlson. Jan Carlson ran Scandinavian Airlines, and he wrote about the experience of turning the airline around from a loser to a winner, and not just a winner, but the most admired airline in the industry, with the simple concept that every interaction that your customers have with you is an opportunity for them to form an impression. It's a simple little thin book that's maybe take you an hour or so to read, but man, it's powerful.
Love it. Love it. We'll put that in the show notes. Shep, if they want to reach you, if our audience wants to reach you, they can go to hyken.com. They can follow you on social media. Anything else they need to know?
Yeah, hyken.com. Twitter handle is Hyken. Why waste an extra 4 characters by including my first name? But seriously, follow me on all the social channels, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Just search for my name and you'll find me.
And I can tell you, if you're looking for just one of the, not just an expert on a subject, but one of the most engaging and entertaining, just blow your mind speakers, if you're looking for that for your next organization, you got to call Shep Hyken. Shep, thank you so much for being on the Buyer's Mind. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. My pleasure. And thank you for those nice, kind words.
Well, Murph, Shep Hyken, a great guy, a strong thinker, absolutely one of the foremost thinkers in the area of customer care. And I love the whole concept of amazing versus, quote, customer service, because customer service is so trite, it's so hackneyed, it's so overused. But when you think about amazing, that really raises the bar, doesn't it?
I think back to the fact that you and I both come from the Order of the White Coat, as you like to put it, serving people in restaurants.
Yes, right.
And so it's the difference between McDonald's and going to a restaurant where you actually have a waiter wait on you. It's just different.
And if that waiter or waitress is going out of their way to try and look at it and say, how do I make this an experience and not just the delivery of food, well, you can tell. And it's amazing when that happens. I also love the idea that Shep brought up, that what is happening on the inside of the organization, that is with the employees, is being felt on the outside of the organization, that is with the customers. Murph, I know that at Shore Consulting, I know you know this too, that we think in this language. Can you just sort of chat real quick with everybody about how we talk in the terms of front stage and backstage?
Yeah, so we have two separate levels, right? We have the backstage, where normally I'm working, although this is one of those weird occasions where I'm also a little bit front stage, but mainly backstage. And then we have presenters like yourself and Amy O'Connor and Ryan Taft, who are doing the presenting. Their goal is to train people and to get them the information that they need. But there's a whole lot of support that has to go on behind the scenes to help them get to where they need to be so that they appear flawless and get that information out. And so there's just a ton of work that all of us are doing back behind the scenes to make everybody's sign-up experience and to make it smooth and easy for the customer to sign up and be a part of the training that we offer.
Sure, because easy equals right. That's one of our shortcuts, and there's no question. We think in those terms. We think in terms of a stage, of business as theater, and there is that front stage experience. Look, if you're in the audience of a show, you want to know that the backstage people are doing their job and doing it well, because if they're not, guess what's going to happen? It's going to affect the front stage, and that's when it affects the customer. So be thinking along those lines. One other thing that Shep Hyken brought up that I thought was great was the importance of confidence. That as a consumer, we feel more confident in our purchase decisions when the person we are dealing with is taking good care of us. And so if you could look at it from that perspective, as you are serving your customer, as you are amazing your customer, it gives them confidence. It actually affects the way that they will purchase, and that's never a bad thing. So let me make this one suggestion then, the one thing as far as an action to take away from our conversation with Shep Hyken. Make a commitment to amazing before you meet the customer for the first time. Ask yourself, what can I do to make this an amazing experience? And if you're thinking about that even before you see the customer, then your head is on straight. You are thinking in terms of amazing, and you'll watch and see how it changes the way that you interact with the customer. And that leads us to our wrap up here. And I want to just challenge you in the wrap up. We have more fun when we enjoy the people that we are working with. So my advice to you, you go first. When you change the way you see people, the people that you see will change. So you go first. You make the commitment to have fun. You make the commitment to be amazing. You make the commitment, regardless of what you're going to get from your customer, that you're going to be positive, that you're going to be upbeat, that you're going to be service-oriented, and that you're going to make for an amazing experience. And even if you meet somebody who's a little grumpy, a little scared, maybe they've had a bad experience in the past, my advice, outlast them. Do not let any negative energy take you off of your positive energy perch. Now, look, I'm not suggesting that you have to be rowdy and hyper like a Jack Russell Terrier that got into a case of Red Bull here. I'm suggesting it's not a matter of intense energy. It's a matter of positive energy, that my customer can see that positive energy coming out of me, and over time they can adopt the same. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of The Buyer's Mind. If you've subscribed to the podcast, thank you so very much. If you haven't, please do that now. If you want to leave a review, we always appreciate it. But mostly, boy, a link to that podcast on your social media page would mean the world to us. That's a wrap on today's episode of The Buyer's Mind. You can find everything you need at jeffshore.com. But until next time, go out there and change someone's world.